Jedi, acting so silly, getting all killy. On Brenda, baby.
All right, that song at the beginning of this video, that is an AI song that I wrote with Udio, and I wrote the lyrics. They're just silly lyrics, but the Acolyte has inspired me to make goofy songs. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's a silver lining. The 7th episode, I think, might be the strongest episode of the series, just in terms of like telling a coherent story within a single episode with a beginning, middle, and end. Unfortunately, it was kind of repetitive in terms of the actual content. Like, we pretty much assumed something like this went down from the very beginning, and especially from the episode 3 where they did the first flashback and showed the girl's point of view. There's a lot of weird little incoherent things in this episode. Like, this is apparently Soul telling May what happened. First of all, May already knows what happened, right? She was there. Osha's the one that doesn't know what happened, but Soul knew this was May, so it really doesn't make sense that he's like going into this flashback in this with this structure. Second of all, the actual flashback includes a lot of scenes that Soul had no part in, so he wouldn't actually like include this in his own story. Now, I know he's not actually actively telling the story, but the episode is set up like where he's like, May, now you're going to listen to me, and then we get all that flashback stuff, and it's really meant to be from his perspective. So it's weird that we get scenes like between Osha and May that don't involve him. Some people are mad about this episode because of the lost black smoke monster stuff that the witches do, because that like breaks lore or adds to the Jedi or the Force powers. Now, I've never been one to care if stuff's added to Force powers, because it's magic, and I'm okay with new spells in the spell books, so to speak. I also think that like there's a purist nature to this that doesn't really make sense. Like, before Return of the Jedi, there wasn't like Force lightning either. Then the Emperor does that, and it's kind of cool. Like, whoa, there's this Force lightning power, and that's kind of neat. But it really, okay. So I'm going to do a really quick recap. We learned that the Jedi are on Brendok, this planet, because they're looking for something called a vergence, which is like short for convergence. It's essentially a nexus of Force power that can do crazy things. Like, this planet was apparently completely dead 100 years ago, but there's all this life now, and they think this is because of this Force vergence. So the young Padawan Torben, he also known as Tommen, King Tommen from Game of Thrones, but he really wants to go home. He's very homesick. And then they go, and Soul sees the girls, and they figure out there's these witches here on this giant stone fortress that they somehow missed. And they go and weirdly like break into this fortress instead of just like going, and hailing them and trying to. The Jedi act very strangely and with very little common sense this entire episode. It's weird. So they break in, basically, and they're very confrontational about the girls, and for some reason Soul is really worried about the girls right off the bat. I get why he's worried about them later once they discover that they've been created using this vergence. They're like creations of the Force. And also after Mother Anastasia basically goes into Torben's mind and like paralyzes him with dark Force power. That definitely would make me concerned about these girls' safety, especially since they were created by these witches and they don't know like what's going on. I think at that point I would also want to intervene and try to protect the girls. However, the way they do this is by, Torben rushes off because he thinks the girls are proof of the vergence, and so they can go back to Coruscant. And he's so homesick, and there's really, for a trained Padawan who's been doing this his whole life, it seems pretty weird. I wish that they had gone into some more depth about Torben, like that he was actually being impacted by this vergence or something, and it was messing with his head. And then when Anastasia makes it worse with her dark magic, like he's really like afterwards he's not okay, right? They don't show that. They just have him act really rashly. And I wish they'd had him like I wish they'd had some scenes where they're showing that he's like losing his shit, you know? But this show doesn't do like detail very well, right? There's just not attention to detail in the way that you see in something like House of the Dragon or Andor, etc. Torben rushes off, Sol goes after him. They get to the witches' coven fortress, and the witches, meanwhile, Anastasia is saying, you know, I'm going to let Osha go. She can go become a Jedi. It's weird that Osha even wants to go become a Jedi because she's never, I assume she's never even heard of Jedi before this. And she's just willingly like, off I go with these strangers. I wish that they had gone into more depth there also, showing that Osha was really not comfortable around these women, this coven, you know, and got into that more because it seems very rash and very sudden and weird, and not like a kid wouldn't act that way. Like she's not going to just leave her family when they really don't want her to go and they haven't been mistreating her or anything, right? They could have set up this whole thing where these girls are actually really poorly treated and like it's her only escape, you know? Anyways, Coral. Carl?
Carl.
Carl. Carl? 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 Carl. Carl?
Carl.
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 Carl. Carl. Carl.
Mother Coral. The other Koril, anyways, she is the opposite. She doesn't want to let Osha go, and she even like gets May worked up to go like prevent her sister from leaving, and then rallies the other witches to get ready to fight. So when Torben and Sol show up, she's very aggressive. So my colleague at Forbes, Paul Tassi, wrote an article saying that Sol is the villain of the show because he basically goes and kidnaps Osha, and he does it all based on his feelings, and he's not acting rationally. And I think that's a strong word to call Sol the villain. Like, he had real evidence at this point that some dark, dark shit was going on. Like, you're a Jedi, you're in charge of keeping the peace in the galaxy, and then you see these witches who are, like, they can take over your mind, they can create people from the Force, and they are very suspicious. So I think that at this point, Sol was acting rashly because he should have called for backup, basically. Like, they should have had other Jedi come out there, assess the situation, gotten some more, cover for their actions. But once he's confronted with these very aggressive and hostile witches, he doesn't just immediately start to fight them. What happens is Anastasia, when she's trying to stop them from fighting, does a really strange thing, which is turn into the Lost smoke monster, right? From the show, ABC show Lost. And as she's turning into this demonic thing, it's quite scary. And I think Sol does what anybody would do at that point, seeing this, this thing appear, he stabs it and kills Anastasia. If only they had a bacta tank, she could be healed in 5 minutes. But no. He stabs her right through the gut and she dies. And right before that, he saw May run out and he said, Osha, no. And I don't know why, because she's clearly not Osha. They don't even look alike. But he also has the Force, so he can sense which girl this is. This just makes no sense that they do it this way. He could have just said May. No, I don't, So many little details like that in this show are just not great. Anyways, once he kills her, shit hits the fan. They're fighting, and then Coral.
Carl. 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 Carl.
I just feel like I'm saying that wrong. Anyways, she turns into smoke and possesses Kelnaka, the Wookiee Jedi. And then what follows is probably the best part of the episode, which is a fight scene between this giant Wookiee Jedi and Sol and Torben. And the Wookiee is winning. Let's just say that. Partly because all the other witches are lending their power to this possession, right? They're all sitting there chanting, the power of one, the power of two. No, they're not. They're not saying that, but I wish they had been. Would have been good for a laugh. Anyways, so then Indara shows up and she jumps over there and does her cool, Matrix moves and pulls the witch out of Kelnaka's brain with the Force. And this either kills or incapacitates, knocks out the rest of the witches who were chanting, all connected. I don't know. we can't tell. We know we assume they all die, but it looks like this happens when the fortress collapses. And the fortress collapses in the stupidest way imaginable. I'm sorry. There's so many different ways they could have done this, but basically it's because May starts this fire, which she doesn't mean to start. And like, I'm assuming this lamp has like oil in it. So it starts to spread and it hits the electric box. And this must lead to it blowing up the central power or whatever. What would have been a much more compelling thing is if Mother Coral had actually sabotaged the power and had blown up the fortress instead, and then lied about it and said the Jedi did it to trick the witches into fighting for her, you know? Like, there could have been other things that happened there that would have just made the story less, like, head-scratcher, right? Anyways, at this point, Soul runs in to save the girls, and they're both on this bridge that's cracked in the middle, and he's holding both sides of the bridge up, but he can't maintain that much force power. He's just not awesome enough to do that. So he has to make a choice, and he lets May fall, and he brings Osha out, and then they leave. And we don't know. I'm assuming Mother Coral survives in incorporeal form, and then maybe she's involved with the stranger, the Sith character, Khmer, whatever you want to call him. Either she's possessed him, or more likely she's possessed somebody else and she's his master, or who knows. I'm just assuming that since we didn't see her die, she's still alive, but all the other witches are dead, and that's why she's out for vengeance, and that's why Khmer knows about all of this. Like, how else would he have found out about all of this, or contacted May and brought her into the fold? So that kind of has to be the answer. I know it's speculation, but it kind of has to be the answer, that she's involved somehow still and out for vengeance. And we know she's I would say she's the villain, right? Like, her actions, which were so aggressive, like, she didn't need to escalate things that much. She easily could have, if they had not been so aggressive, then some conversation could have ensued. Anasea would have let Osha go with them. The Jedi would have left, everyone would have survived, end of story, right? Even though Soul acted rashly and emotionally, for a Jedi especially, I think it's very clear that it was the witch who escalated things and made everything worse. But she incited May, who started the fire also. So really, it's really all on her. Even if the Jedi weren't perfect, it's ridiculous to blame them for everything that happened. It's ridiculous that Torben is so guilty about everything that happened that he just commit suicide. Like, all of that is just incredibly stupid. And the structure of this show also doesn't help. Like, I would have structured, like, if I were to just take the building blocks of this show, right, and not write my own Acolyte, but rewrite this one, I would have had the opening episode be, they find a body. You know, the body is found. They determine that this is a Jedi, and that this Jedi is Torben. When two detective Jedis show up, Soul and his partner Indara, they are like, oh, we know this guy. That's odd. Like, they start to investigate, and you have sort of a police investigation of this murder with Jedi. And, you know, it's very dark, and they're following up clues, and then they find another body, and this body is Kelnaka. And they're like, wait a minute, these are both Jedi that were on Brendok with us 15 years ago. We should go find Osha, who was a Padawan for a while but then left. So then the next episode, they're searching for Osha, and they find her, but as they go to get her, like, they're attacked by this mysterious figure, and this is the Sith, right? And, you know, this is all just, you know, obviously, if we were to sit down with a script and take some time, we could probably tighten this up and make this better. You could even add more Jedi to the Brendok, like, crew, so that you could have several bodies before they get to this point, but the point is, they're investigating a serial killer, basically, and they discover it's this Sith, though they don't know it's a Sith right away. Then you flash back, and you just show everything that happened. You don't have two different flashback episodes. Episode 3 shows what the Jedi were doing, shows what happened, and then we pick back up into the mystery of hunting down the Sith, and, you know, whatever we do with Osha and May, I don't know. I think the twin stuff has been gimmicky, parent trappy bullshit, so you'd really have to rework that to make that work. And I just don't know. I don't know that it's even necessary. It could have just been one kid, right? They were worried about this one kid. Why does this coven of witches have one kid? And then they rescue her, right? Maybe Soul has to make a choice between rescuing her and rescuing her mother or something. I don't know. So structurally, I think this show has been just all over the place. Like, they didn't really figure out what kind of show they were trying to make, and with the flashbacks and, like, you know, the order of killing characters. I think it would have made a lot more sense to have Soul and Indara be like buddy cop, you know, there's a buddy cop show, right? Like Seven. Like, I'm trying to picture this show like Seven, the movie, with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman and Kevin Spacey. And then you have like this dark, gritty Jedi mystery serial killer show where you still get into this stuff with the Virgins and what happened 15 years ago and why there's this revenge stuff going on. I think that would have been better. I don't know. You also have to just have better writing, because like a lot of this writing is just very silly. Like the way that the Jedi behaved this episode, so rash, so lacking in basic common sense. The way the witches behaved, so aggressive. Like there was no time for really organic escalation. Everything just sort of blows up right away, and it doesn't really make sense. And they didn't like dig into the stuff that was more interesting, like the mind control stuff. I don't know. We got one episode left of this show. I don't know how they could possibly wrap this up in a satisfactory way. So they must be counting on a second season, because we've barely touched, you know, the Sith, who his master is, who his former Jedi master is. And I just feel like this show has a lot of good stuff buried inside what actually ended up being produced. Like, there are some good ideas, but those seem to have been pushed aside for a lot of stuff that just feels like filler and feels very, I don't know, like, was there a great idea, a great script, something there before, and then that was replaced by whatever this show ended up becoming? Because I could see it being good. I really could. Unlike like Book of Boba Fett, which was just a mistake from the beginning. Like, why did they even do that? I could see this having the bones of a good of a good show, but what it is just, again, it's deeply mediocre for the most part. There's a couple of moments that I really enjoyed, and then a lot of stuff that's just super cringy. So let me know what you think in the comments. Are you still watching the show? What did you think of this last episode? What do you think is going to happen in the next episode? Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. Peace.
On Brendak, baby. Jedi acting so silly, getting all